We've barely just gotten used to the idea that both Counter-Strike and Valorant can coexist without an all-out war breaking out on Twitter and Reddit. And all of a sudden, we've got a bunch of new games popping their heads through the doors.
Hello there.
And some, like Sony's Concord, have already disappeared. Discontinued 2 weeks after release, by the way. People like you and me who love the shooter, whether that's fans of hero or tactical shooters, we're either at a state where we're enjoying the game we've been playing for the past few years with thousands of hours of play, or we're starting to get a bit stale, where we're starting to look for something new. Either way, you're asking the question, will these newcomers survive the test of time? If one thing's certain, we've been here before. Valorant's release in existence for the past few years has shown us that no matter how old a genre is, there's still room for change and innovation. And that's an idea, I believe, that has given birth to these new releases. Take Spectre Divide, for example. Inheriting the concept of choosing different characters in order to have access to different types of utility, but also coming up with a new concept of switching between two different playable characters within the game itself. Cool, right? Or Marvel Rivals, taking Overwatch as main inspiration as a hero shooter, but implementing the twist of being in the third person, but also being able to break terrain, let alone being able to play as your favorite Marvel character. Or maybe you've come across Fragpunk, which has implemented a card-playing aspect to the game, making each and every round you play completely different. Or drumroll please, Deadlock. A game which, even though is supposed to be in closed beta, has more than 100,000 players playing it right now. This Valve game has brought incredible movement to a very stale idea of a third-person shooter actually being a MOBA game. These arguable innovations and tweaks have taken the attention of a lot of people. Sure, some more than others, but it's definitely been enough to bring your attention to this video. So, what's the #1 rule for any game success? It's gotta be fun. Sure, that box is already ticked for these new launches, but these games need to continue to be fun. Now, I don't say that without reason. Take Overwatch, for example. That game, when it first released, was so awesome to play. Awesome mechanics, brilliant and satisfying gameplay, and a universe that had us invested from day one. Jump to today, and the game feels soulless. After unfulfilled promises, years of not developing the game to release its successor, Overwatch 2, which was basically the same game, but 5v5 instead of 6v6. Thanks, Activision, I guess? But back to the main topic. With all these new cool games releasing, people are having an itch scratched they didn't even know they had. You can't help but feel a little bit of nostalgia from the old days of gaming, where you'd spend all night playing video games, pretending to be asleep, then going to school, not being able to participate because you're probably sleeping during class, and then going back home, not being able to wait to launch your PC and get back to gaming. But like any other type of dopamine boost, that feeling isn't gonna last forever. So will these games stand the test of time? Will they be able to grab the attention of the hardcore gamers and aspiring pros to commit and play full-time to potentially be amongst the best in the world? Will they also keep the casual players satisfied without overwhelming them with a level of complexity they couldn't possibly comprehend without having to leave school, their jobs, or wives and children? Can they create a player base large enough to foster an esports scene? Well, let's look at these games one by one. We've all heard the noise of Deadlock, whether that's this clip from Shroud.
Yeah, this game is gonna easily, and I mean easily, take over in 2 years when it comes out, for sure.
Deadlock hasn't even been released yet, but people are flocking in to play the game, many of them hoping it's the next big thing. The game feels fresh, mostly compared to Smite given the similarities in being a shooter and a MOBA game in one, but it's completely different. The movement mechanics, the unique take on the map layout, as well as given that it's a Valve product, you can't help but get excited for it. But is it cut out for long-term success? You don't have to look far for its biggest flaw, its complexity. This won't only make this game very difficult for your average Joe to pick up as a game to play, but it will also make it quite difficult to spectate as an esports game. If history has taught us anything, it's not impossible to make a hard-to-spectate game watchable. Overwatch tried really hard to make their chaotic to the untrained eye game spectatable, and its peak had succeeded with retaining viewers throughout the games, whether that was with color grading each team's abilities and heroes, giving each team of the Overwatch League their own skins, and even creating a subscription-based improved viewing experience on Twitch, where viewers could watch as many players' perspectives they wanted simultaneously, as well as having a ton of statistics and graphs available for them. But Pavlos, Overwatch is nowhere near to the peak it once was. You're right, but I still wouldn't consider its hard to watch aspect as even a top 5 reason why that game failed. Maybe I should make a video about that. Anyway, it's fair to say Deadlock is one of the most complicated games out there. Not only having 12 different characters being played concurrently in-game, but also the fact that it's still a MOBA game. Again, it's not impossible to make it spectatable, but it's not going to be easy either. Let's see if Valve is up to the task to make this work as an esport. When it comes to Spectre Divide, this game most of you will already know from being co-developed with the esports personality, ex-pro and content creator Shroud. This game, all the while having its unique mechanic of switching through a second character, is still very similar to both Counter-Strike and Valorant, and will always be in direct competition over the player bases and attention of both of those games. When Valorant was announced, many feared that it would fail for the same reason, that Counter-Strike had too big of a monopoly on the genre, and there's no way that people would migrate over to this new game. But Valorant had a big positive. It was developed by Riot Games, a game development company who had more than a decade's worth of experience building and maintaining a game at the forefront of esports, League of Legends. The developers of Spectre Divide Mountaintop Studios, albeit showing a lot of potential, they are still an unproven entity, and time will tell whether they have the capacity of investing in a potential future and esports scene of this game. This makes it tough for players, especially the pros, to fully commit to the game without a foot out the door. The game is still extremely fun, and what I could argue being up to par with the playing experience of both Counter-Strike and Valorant, let alone being quite easy to spectate in comparison with the latter. So if over time, the developers show stability in updates, listening to community feedback and laying grounds for a prospective esports scene, then I don't see why not this game couldn't catch on. Marvel Rivals. Now, that's just not any sigh. That's a sigh of relief. Relief of years and years of pain and misery inflicted upon the community from Blizzard and Activision. We finally have an alternative, guys. We finally have an alternative. Now, the game hasn't fully been released yet, but if you did have the opportunity to play during the closed alpha, you'll know that it doesn't play quite the same as Overwatch, but it's still bloody fun. For people that don't know what I'm talking about, Marvel Rivals is a hero shooter. It has awesome Marvel characters, new mount mechanics where Rocket can climb on Groot's shoulders and cause mayhem, where Spider-Man can go head-to-head with Iron Man, and so much more. Even in alpha, the game had incredible polish. But as the game is quite similar to Overwatch, it's likely it will have very similar pitfalls. We've already talked about the spectating system and that a 6v6 hero shooter with all sorts of abilities will always be very difficult to spectate. But again, it's not impossible to solve. I think the biggest problem for this title lies elsewhere. Now, people love Marvel, but what also people love to hate is corporate greed. Let's be fair, it's a ticking time bomb before corporate knocks on the door of the developers asking to milk this game dry. No one likes the blatant exploitation of the addiction of having the newest cosmetic unlocked. Remember the €200 Ari skin in League of Legends? Players were banning that champion so no one could use the bloody thing. Not even Faker used the skin in his professional matches. And that's who the skin was made for.
He's not using it!
Riot took a risk with that, but even through all the lashback, the game is already too big to fail. It has millions and millions of players who are, quite frankly, already addicted to the game. So they could afford that mistake. But for Marvel Rivals, that's not the case. It's a new game. If they choose to cash in too quick, they're not going to be cashing much out. New games have always appeared. Some survived a little while, some died straight away. Yeah, I'm not pointing fingers. But only few become mainstays, and maybe even esports staples. The chances are against newcomers. But I can't help but feel there's something different about this time. There's something special about these new games. And that something might just be enough to keep them alive for a good while to come.